Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of New England Sports Weekly. As always, I am your host, Sean Metcalf, and I am glad that you've decided to join me this evening for another live stream of the podcast. Or if you're listening on Spotify or on SoundCloud, I'm glad you've decided to join me on if you're living here in Maine or anywhere in New England or Northeast for that matter, if you're out on a walk, I don't know why you'd be doing that, or a jog. You're nuts if you're doing that. It's 20 degrees tonight, but it's been in the single digits below zero. So you're a better man than I am, better person than I am. I'm doing my cardio in my friend's basement that has a gym. So that's where I'm doing it. I am not going to go freeze my nuts off outside right now. I'm going to tell you that much right now. I don't want to do that. I am going to stay right here inside. And once it starts to warm up, once we get towards spring, then I'll join you guys. I'll be jogging out there. But for now, I am going to stay right here in the warmth or down in somebody's basement working out there. But anyways, if you're out there jogging or you're working out or you're going to the store, wherever you are, I'm glad that you decided to join me this evening on the podcast or whatever time of day for you. And it is going to be a packed show for you all we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off here, folks. I'm sure most of you anyways, watched that debacle, that car crash, that absolute just embarrassing loss that the Patriots had to the Buffalo Bills in the wild card round in the opening round. It just was not pretty. Not pretty at all. But it was gonna. I told you folks last week that I thought the Patriots were going to lose. I picked the Buffalo Bills to move on, and I was not wrong from that standpoint. So we'll pick through that plane crash, that whatever you want, a car crash later on, that debacle. We'll go through that. And as the fallout continues from the end of the season for the Patriots, Gerard Mayo and Dave Ziegler, the front office, are rumored to be heading out. Gerard Mayo for head coaching, or not rumored to be heading out, but rumored in numerous coaching and GM searches, and as well as Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels today was reported to be a front runner for I was going to say Oakland, but it's the Las Vegas Raiders job, and possibly Dave Ziegler might go there. Gerard Mayo has been rumored to go to the Denver Broncos as well, so he's been thrown in there. So both of those coaches have been thrown in there along with some other former Patriots coaches. We all know Brian Flores has gotten some offers as well, or some interviews as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes for the Patriots coaching staff. But that's really been the big stories here for the Patriots, their loss, and as we mentioned, we'll dig through that and what the future is going to hold here for the Patriots, as well as the coaches. And as we take some more items here out of the box as we hustle down the line, the Boston Bruins were on a nice 3-game winning streak that got snapped with a loss to the Carolina Hurricanes. They absolutely got whooped, as it was 7-1 loss. I think that was on either Sunday or Monday, and I was just adding to the pouring salt in the wound after how this weekend's gone. And Tuukka Rask made his debut, as we mentioned on last week's podcast on Wednesday. Tuukka was scheduled to go that Thursday night. He's looked okay. I mean, obviously he's going to have to knock off some rust, but Tuukka made his debut, even though the Bruins got their butts kicked against Carolina. He's back in the fold, so we'll see how that all pans out for the Bruins as we head towards the trade deadline and we start to go towards that second half of the season for the Bruins. It doesn't seem that flew by, folks. It just seemed like yesterday the Bruins were tipping off the puck, not tipping it off, but where they had the opening tip. I'm mixing my basketball and my hockey here because I was just about to talk about the Boston Celtics, but you know what I mean. The opening face-off. There we go. There we go, folks. And as we mentioned, the Boston Celtics are pretty much put in the wash, rinse, and repeat cycle at this point in time with how their season's gone. It just has been awful. It has been awful. It just every time I do this podcast, and every time you turn on the Celtics, whenever you look at any stories, listen to anything, it's always the same story with this team. It just has been not been any positive momentum moving on here for the Celtics. So we'll talk about that for the Celtics as they drop another one to another below 500, another bottom, well, not bottom feeder, but another one of those teams that's competing for the play-in round with the Charlotte Hornets. So that was another kick in the you know what for these Boston Celtics. So we'll touch on that a little bit later on. But as we mentioned right off the top of the show, I mean, the big one was the New England Patriots dropping this one and getting knocked out of the playoffs big time by the Buffalo Bills. So 20 years of frustration came out in that playoff game on Saturday, where the Patriots basically from kickoff, other than Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne and maybe one or two other players you sprinkle them in there, showed up for this game. From the start, it was just awful. Just awful. The defense did not come to play as the Patriots lost 47-17. But that really didn't even seem that close. I know everybody's been saying it didn't seem that close, but I mean, that's the best way to put it because this team did not show up at all. At all. It was pretty much walk out, test how it was, how cold it was outside before kickoff. And I don't know why this team was not motivated going into this playoff game. Like I said, I thought the Bills would win, but I thought, as I mentioned in last week's podcast, this was going to be one of those 24-17, 20-24, basically a touchdown or field goal game is what I thought this was going to come down to. That's pretty much what I thought this was going to be. And for the most part, I mean, for everything that I talked about last week, how the Patriots had to come out in this game, how they even had a shot to be competitive to even win this game, none of that came to fruition. It was pretty much the Bills came out, punched them right in the face and knocked out, and not even in the face, you got punched right in the mouth and knocked out all your teeth. And it was just ugly, 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 ugly ass whooping is what happened. And like I said, it was like all 20 years of frustration came out in that one game. In since well, yesterday and today, the audio has come out with Jordan Poyer, and I mean, I can't really play it here because one, it's NFL films really, they don't have the rights, and secondarily, it's a lot of f bombs, a lot of swearing, and I'd like to try to get these podcasts monetized. So I'm not gonna be. I'll try to use the swear words very, very sparingly. So I don't want to like I said, don't want to be demonetized. But anyways, from the standpoint, a lot of f bombs, a lot of this is our effing time. They've had all their effing fun. Their dynasties haven't done blah blah blah. So you catch the drill. It's one of those big rah rah speeches where trying to fire the team up, trying to say this is our time now. Their time's done. We're the big bully on the block now, and I mean they kind of came out and proved it. If we're going to be truly honest here, the Bills came out and were the bully on the block in this game. Like I said, from Jump Street, they came right down. and scored on the opening drive, methodically came right down because later on in the game, they had big gut busting drives that they had hit basically home runs on where they didn't have to march right. They didn't have to go 8 plays, but that first drive, they had an opportunity. I'll give the Patriots defense like maybe a 1% little bit of credit here because they had an opportunity on a third, and I believe it was like 3rd and 7 from the goal. That was pretty. It was 3rd and goal, and it was about like 5 or 7 yards out from the goal. They had an opportunity to push to stop Josh Allen from throwing a touchdown to open up the game, and they had an opportunity, and it would have forced them into getting a field goal, and you would have felt okay about it. But and Josh Allen even admitted this week that he pretty much was just throwing that ball away, and he just found Dawson Knox, who caught that and toe tapped, and he got it in as he was falling on his back. So the Patriots had an opportunity, but that was pretty much the closest they would come to any stop because the Buffalo Bills went 7 for 7 on touchdown drives with Josh Allen in the game. That's how bad it was for the Patriots defense. And as I talked about last week, if you're going to have any chance of winning this game, because as we saw in December, the defense did not come out strong outside of the Jacksonville game, but that's Jacksonville, so they're competing for the first overall pick in the draft, which they ended up getting, which they kind of backed into, but that's not our worry here. But pretty much what happened in this case was just what I said last week. You had to come out and you had to play fast. You had to come out and play like your hair's on fire, basically, because you didn't see that in December. You didn't see that out. I should say you only saw that in the Buffalo game, in the regular season game in Buffalo. But against the Colts, second game against Buffalo and Miami, opening drives, touchdowns, or you're getting a score. You're giving up points on the opening drive. You're just getting sliced and diced. And it's in most of those games, it wasn't like at least opening the game. In most of these games, it wasn't like, okay, here's a 50-yard touchdown bomb to Stephon Diggs or Michael Pittman or whoever it was in the regular season. And in the playoff game, it wasn't like the Bills hit a home run, a deep ball pass down to Stephon Diggs. No, that wasn't the case. In most cases, they were 6, 7, 8, 10 play drives. I think the Miami one was like 12 plays or something like that. And it came down to them not coming out starting strong, and you're behind the 8 ball already. You're down 7-0. And then after that, the Patriots gave up another touchdown on the next drive. And we'll talk a second here about what Mac did. He looked okay, but after the Bills got the ball back, after the Patriots looked like they were going to get a touchdown, and then Micah Hyde got a tremendous pick. They marched down, they made it 14-0, and you're like, oh boy, this is not what you wanted to see. You're like, you as much as I love what Mac has done, and as full circle as I have come around on Mac, where you all know in the draft I wanted Justin Fields. I've come full circle. I've my eyes have been open to Mac. I'm a believer in Mac now. I think you can build around him. Now, is he the perfect quarterback? No, we'll talk about that here shortly. But my point being is that when it comes to what I wanted from this defense, I wanted to come out strong so that you give Mac Jones and this offense an opportunity to not to keep pace, but because that'd be the wrong terminology, but to at least have an opportunity to get a lead early. Even if you give up a field goal, you go down and you get a touchdown. The old untouchables line. You go in with my horrible Sean Connery impression. This is the Chicago way. They come in with a knife. You get them with a gun. They send one of yours to the hospital. You send one of his to the morgue. But that's what I wanted to see from them. So and folks, you can turn the volume back up if my Sean Connery impression wasn't that good, but you get the drift here. It's you if you make them score field goals, you come out and you punch them in the face with a touchdown. That was what you wanted to see from the Patriots, at least early on, because you knew eventually the Bills, even though I thought the Bills were going to win, I just thought if the Patriots were going to have an opportunity, if this was going to be a field goal or just a touchdown game where things could swing around, that was what I was thinking for the Patriots. If they were going to pull out a victory, you wanted the defense to come out, start strong, just give up a field goal or hold them to 0 points, or at least hold them to a couple field goals before the floodgates open, before they get their touchdowns. But no, that's not what happened. It was right down the field on the first drive. It was nothing happened. Really, no opportunities except for on that last 3rd and 5 before you would have forced them into a field goal. Nope, you gave up a touchdown. Then Mac throws the pick on a beautiful pass that was a beautiful interception. They come down and get the 7 points, and you're in the hole. Which that's where your butthole started to pucker and get tight as far as those Patriots players, because it was like, here we go. We don't have all these weapons. And don't get me wrong, I like Kendrick Bourne, I like Hunter Henry, but they're complementary pieces, because Hunter Henry is not a Gronkowski. He's not Gronkowski in his prime. He's not a George Kittle. He's not a Travis Kelce, Darren Waller type where he's going to take over a game. But he's a good red zone threat. He's a good complementary piece, but he's just not a guy that's going to take over. And Kendrick Bourne, he's way better than I ever thought he was going to be. I remember watching him in San Francisco. I didn't think he was going to be as good as he was this year. He had over 800 yards receiving. He set career highs in receptions, receiving yards, and he just had a tremendous year. But still, you don't have the offensive firepower. You don't have that number one. Hell, you don't even have a Julian Edelman. You don't. You don't even have what you had back in 2018. I mean, obviously, the weapons are a lot better than what you've had over the past couple of years. I'll give them that. That has improved. You're building your base, but still in this game, when they went down 14-0, that was pretty much where you're like, the game isn't over, because you don't. Maybe the defense can turn it around, but I did not have a good feeling. Once they got down by 21, I mean, once they got down by 20 and it was 20-0, and you're just like, here we go. That really, really being down 14-20 when the off. I mean, I know not everybody, but I know some people have ragged on the offense. Oh, well, yeah, the defense sucked, but you didn't get anything from the offense. But really, your offensive game plan was run heavy, try to replicate what you did last time in Buffalo, and have Mac manage the game at this point. Because, like I said, he just doesn't have those offensive weapons yet to go into a gunfight, basically into a firefight. He's really not equipped for that right now. Not obviously, I think he can, but when you're down 14-0, and then you come out on that next offensive drive, and then you just run. You don't even pass. That's where you've got a bad feeling, and you're like, this defense is like Swiss cheese tonight. That was the part that just got it so exposed. I mean, we'll talk about the offense here, and I know we talked a little bit about them already, but just looking at what happened defensively, that was the most disappointing part. 7 drives, 7 touchdowns when Josh Allen was in the game. That's just inexcusable. Inexcusable. Even the lowly Eagles, I shouldn't say lowly, but even the Eagles, who were the 7th seed in the NFC, didn't even do that. They didn't. They lost big time. Well, I mean, they came back and scored a couple touchdowns there, and it was a 33-15 win, but really it wasn't even that close because they got all their points in garbage time, basically. But even the Eagles were able to stop Tom Brady in that offense. So what the Patriots did not do on defense was just horrendous. Josh Allen had his way with him. He was 21 for 25 or 21 for 26 for over 308 yards, 5 touchdown passes. And it was just so demoralizing. because there were opportunities on third and long, third and medium opportunities for the Patriots defense to try to buckle down and get off the field. But no, that did not happen. You pretty much just had Josh Allen either throwing a dart down to Stephon Diggs or Isaiah McKenzie, who, for the love of God, like, I mean, I think this is a guy that probably will end up with the Patriots here. He's a free agent. And it's just because that he seems like one of those guys, like a Wes Welker, not what Wes Welker did. Wes Welker's a borderline Hall of Famer, might be. But I mean, it just in that mold of, okay, this is a guy that's killed us. Let's bring him in. But Isaiah McKenzie, you're not going to mistake him for DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams, or Justin Jefferson anytime soon, or Jamar Chase. But you wouldn't know that by watching the Patriots play Isaiah McKenzie, who I believe has 15 or 19 receptions for like almost 200 yards receiving, and he's just absolutely killed the Patriots in these last two matchups. And going back and looking in even to the regular season in this game, 15 drives and no punts. No punts. No goddamn punts. Oh my. It's just so frustrating. I mean, as you can hear in my voice, it's just so effing frustrating what happened with that defense. It's like, where did Matt Judon go? Where did this defense go? And I'm not gonna rag on Christian Barmore because he got hurt in that last week against Miami, and I didn't even think he was going to play. Kyle Duggar was out there with a absolute bowling ball. He got a club strapped to his, I think it was his left hand. So obviously he can't intercept any passes, and it's going to be harder for him to tackle. So you got guys out there injured, but still the healthy guys and the veterans, they just did not come to play. Nobody really came to play in that game defensively. There's a play with Matthew Judon had an opportunity to stop Josh Allen, but Josh Allen just absolutely twisted him around. And Matthew Judon, I love him, but I think something's going on health-wise. Something had to have happened, or maybe he's still suffering from COVID. I don't know, but it's just he doesn't seem right because his last 4 or 5 games of the season, he wasn't the same Matthew Judon that was racking up the sacks and who was in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. But they just did not look good. And the older players, the Hightowers, the Van Oys, the McCourties, I mean, really more the linebacking core, but still those older veterans got exposed. The Patriots linebacking core looks so slow now, especially with the Hightowers and the Van Oys. This is the end of the road for me for Hightower and Van Oy. You just have to say goodbye to them, and you just wish them well. I mean, maybe they retire. So, but still, it's just so disappointing because when it comes to Dante Hightower, this is a guy that for most of his career was a big game player. Just go back to Super Bowl 49 where he made big plays at the goal line. He was on the play that basically stopped Marshawn Lynch before the famous Malcolm Butler pick. He stopped Marshawn Lynch at the 2-yard line, I believe it was, 1 or 2 yard line. So he came up big there. And obviously Super Bowl 51, he came up with the huge strip sack of Matt Ryan. So, I mean, and it goes on and on with Hightower in the playoffs. He was a big game player. I mean, he wasn't, when he was younger, he wasn't slow. I mean, he was a big thumper, but he wasn't like slow, like a defensive lineman slow for at least for a thumper, but he's definitely lost a step or two now. And I mean, like I said, he was never a speed demon like a Devin White or a Micah Parsons, one of these faster, not undersized, because I wouldn't call him undersized anymore just because that's the way the linebackers have gone. It's not like he's 215. A lot of these guys are in their 230s, 240s area. That that way. So they're not that high 250s, 260s, big lugs of linebackers like Hightower. Don't get me wrong, he was good for a long time. He made a lot of plays, but he's slow. Kyle Van Noy, he's getting there too. He's got another year on the contract, but I just don't. Maybe if you renegotiate it and you keep him around to have a veteran in the linebacking core, I wouldn't. I mean, you got to me. I would rather say goodbye to these guys and you bring in some other veterans that still have something left in the tank. But you just have to say goodbye to the Jamie Collins, the Dante Hightowers, the Kyle Van Noy's. You just have to say goodbye just because they're old and they're slow now. This isn't even 2018 where they looked like a dominating defense in that Super Bowl against the Rams. This isn't even that anymore. This is just they got exposed. And Devin McCourty in the secondary, I think Devin McCourty I would take back. Devin McCourty is the one older veteran that I would say, come on back here, Devin. You've got a lot of experience. We're still going to need a veteran or two veterans around here that know the Patriot way or the Patriot culture to keep that going, because it's still important. But he didn't look himself. He doesn't. But he's probably lost a little bit of a step. There were some plays, especially in Miami, at the end of the regular season where he could have had a pick, and he didn't make it. So there's just been opportunities that just this defense did not make over that playoff game against Buffalo. They looked old and slow. Josh Allen absolutely embarrassed them. And they couldn't stop frigging Mike Singletary, but Devin Singletary, who, as I told you, I watched him because he was on my fantasy team. And when I was forced into having to play him when I was looking for guys after injuries, he was not good. Not good. He's average at best. And I'm saying at best, he's a mediocre running back. And the Patriots allowed him to get 2 touchdowns in this game. 2 touchdowns from Devin Singletary. Oh, they just got so exposed. I mean, Josh Allen was the big reason why they won. And I mean, he absolutely shredded the defense. Like I said, he came up with some big third down runs. So it was so embarrassing to watch this team out there on Saturday night. It was just, what are you doing? What's happening? I know you're no, are they a fraud? Can we say that? Was this a fraud defense? I don't know if I'm going to go so far as to answer my own question. I don't know if they're an actual fraud. I don't know if I'm going to go that far, because you can't just be if you're a fraud, you probably, like some of these playoff contenders, probably would have lost to one of these Jacksonville or one of those other teams where you get absolutely blown out by one of these teams in a regular season. But to their credit, they never got blown out by any team in the regular season, really. They didn't get blown out till the playoffs. So I can't call them a fraud because they did have good aspects. You have some young building blocks and Barmore, and those are coming along. But still, when your defense over this last month of the season, when you faced really good teams, they got shredded by Buffalo in New England. Like I said, you didn't get blown out because you're able to keep up and you had an opportunity to win, but still you gave up 30 some odd points. Against the Colts, he gave up 27. Against the Dolphins, again, you gave up close to 30. And the other reason I don't want to call him a fraud is because they played really well against Tampa. And this was when Tampa had Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, when they had basically their full complement. I mean, they didn't have, I think AB was there. But anyways, besides the point, you had a healthy Tampa team and you held them to 19 points. but they had their moments this year where they actually looked like a good defense. But I think a lot of it was built up over playing that 7 game stretch where they won 7 games in a row, 7 game win streak. That's where they really buttered their bread during that stretch. But later on in the year, when you had to have it against Indy, who was a fraud playoff team, they got gashed by their run game, which, I mean, there's no shame in that because Jonathan Taylor probably next to Derrick Henry is probably the best back or the best pure running back. I'd put other guys like Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara ahead of them as far as all around backs. But as a pure running back, Jonathan Taylor might be the second best guy behind Derrick Henry. But anyways, this defense, I'm not going to call them frauds. I won't call them frauds at this point. But really, though, it was not pretty. They just got exposed. Like I said, they need to get younger in the linebacking core. I mean, they need to get younger all around on the defense. I mean, they're starting to get there when you brought in Christian Barmore. Josh Uche really kind of had a disappearing act this year after all that hype coming out of training camp, and I even thought he was going to bust out this year, but he didn't. So, I mean, you potentially Josh Uche, if he can come back and be healthy and actually suit up this year and play well. But I mean, you got Christian Barmore, you have Matthew Judon, who actually is sneakily getting up there in age. But I mean, you have some pieces there that you can start to build around defensively. And you're going to have, like I said, you still have you have Barmore. You're going to bring back Lawrence Guy. You still have Matthew Judon. You still have pieces that are there, but to me, you got to get younger and faster at the linebacker core. Because for me, this is where Belichick, I love him. He's the greatest coach of all time, but this is where he needs to get with the times as far as you have to get those younger, faster linebackers higher in the draft. I know, obviously, I know you have to stay unless you have all this ammo to move up. If you're drafting lower, like the Patriots always do, or at least for the most part, unlike last year, when you're drafting down lower, I know you're not going to get the opportunities to get the Micah Parsons, Patrick Queens, Kenneth Murray's, those stud linebackers that are going high in the draft, or you're back in the day, the Patrick Willis's, you name them. But and obviously the Devin Whites that went back in, what was it, 2016, 2017, or 18. But when it comes to or 2019, sorry. But you catch the drift. The Devin Whites, the Devontae Davises, those younger, faster, but still powerful, do it all linebackers. You're not going to, obviously, it's going to be hard for you to get that high in the draft unless you trade up for them. But still, you can't, you have to kind of find that sweet spot. You can't, like they've done in the past, like with Cameron McGroin, who is a younger linebacker that's a little in the mold, but he's a very much more bargain bin, because trust me, after watching Michigan, being a Michigan fan and watching them, I mean, McGroin's good. He can be more, to me, a complementary piece. He's kind of more in the mold of a faster version of the Purdue linebacker that the Patriots have. He's number 8, Juwan Bentley. He's more of he's kind of a little bit faster version of Bentley, because Bentley's more the old school thumper. But to me, that's what you kind of got. But he's been hurt, so it really they've tried to take chances later on the draft. But to me, this is where you have to spend your if they're available. Let me put it that way: if they're available, you have to spend that draft capital on those younger, faster linebackers so that you're not getting gashed by a lot of these running quarterbacks. Because as we kind of move away from that train wreck of Buffalo, because I mean, that was an absolute beatdown. You're going to have to deal with Josh Allen for the foreseeable future for at least, in my opinion, at least a minimum of 10 years, unless obviously something happens, which you don't wish injuries on anybody. But still, you have to deal with the Lamar Jacksons. Patrick Mahomes has mobility. You name it. The Kyler, I know Kyler Murray's not in their conference, but guys like that are all around. And then even Ryan Tannehill falls into that mold, to be quite honest, is more mobile because he played receiver before in college before he switched over to quarterback at Texas A&M. But the point being is that a lot of the modern quarterbacks, I mean, in my opinions on that, we can discuss another day of as far as what quarterbacks, if you can still win with a Mac Jones, Tom Brady, Drew Brees pocket style, which I think you still can. I don't think I don't think they're dinosaurs like everybody wants to make them out to be. Are they more rare now, or are they harder to find? Yeah, but it's looking though at what you're going to have to face in the AFC and in the NFL in general. A lot of those mobile slash running slash mobile quarterbacks that are out there in the Josh Allen, the Aaron Rodgers, those types where Patrick Mahomes, where you're using your legs to, you can run, but you're really kind of sliding out of the pocket. You're kind of you're sliding around, making these plays, and you can obviously run when you have to. So you're going to have to face a lot of these guys. You're not going to just get away with being able to have these old school thumper linebackers because we're not facing 1970s, 1980s football where it's pound the rock, pound the rock. We got Walter Payton, we got Barry Sanders, we got Franco Harris out there running the rock for over 1,800 yards a season. And it's not 3 yards in a cloud of dust. No, this is a bombs away type of league. And not that obviously I know running backs, those are still important, but the point being is that even the running backs that are out there, if you want to even throw that, you have to cover them with those athletic linebackers because those running backs are out there in the pass game too. So if you split out, if you use your linebacker to cover a running back, you need those athletic linebackers because they're basically those running backs like the Alvin Kamaras, the Christian McCaffreys. Hell, even if you want to look at James White, because he's more catching specialty, the Dalvin Cooks, you name them. A lot of these modern running backs are dual threats. So if you're talking the quarterback, you're talking the running backs. Hell, if you got to put them on a tight end, you're running into a lot better athletes now. Even like when I was in elementary, middle school through high school, because I graduated high school in 09. Even way back then, God, I just aged myself. I made myself sound old saying that. But even back in 09, you look, and I mean, that's kind of where a lot of the 07 through, probably around 07 through 09, that's really where you had everything really, really start to blow up. Because before then, it was kind of like you had the occasional teams like the Rams throwing a lot, but it wasn't as widespread as it is now, as it really started to be probably 07 and after. But the point being is, like, when I was growing up, you could get away with having the bigger physical linebackers. Hell, you have Brian Urlacher out there, the Hall of Famer. I mean, obviously, if you're a Hall of Famer, you're probably going you could still play in today's day and age. But my point being is that you had the bigger physical thumpers because even going up against the tight ends and the running backs and even those slot receiver slash inside receivers, it was more physical than it is now because now even the slot guys or those receivers and tight ends that are going across the middle, they're faster and more athletic. So it's not even like when I was growing up where you could get away with having those big thumper linebackers. You have to have those guys like the Levante Davids, like especially the Devin Whites and the Micah Parsons. Those are the athletic new linebackers that you have to have. you have to have at least one of them on your front seven. And the Patriots don't have that. And I know I've kind of gone the long-winded way around it, but really that's what they have to get. They have to get younger and faster and more athletic at linebacker so you can cover those guys. And especially with Josh Allen in your division, you're going to need that for a long time now. And if you can get it in the draft, and we'll once we get closer to the draft, we'll break down the actual players who they should go after. Tonight, we're not going to get into the actual players, but obviously, unless one pops up that I can think of, but really, you're just looking for that style of linebacker to go out and help you. That's really what you need. But as it because as much as I want that wide receiver, because trust me, I've been going back and forth, and I'll probably change my mind as we go along here. But really, after getting exposed by this Bills team and knowing that you're going to be in your own division, you're going to need to get those linebackers. Now, the only caveat here is kind of looking early on in this draft. There's some guys later on that I think you can probably get in the second round because I don't see that. Well, I should say I don't see that first round linebacker like that's going to be available. And because you have the linebacker out of Georgia that won the national title game, that who's an absolute stud, who looks like he's going to be a first round top 10 talent in this NFL draft. He basically looks like he's going to steal the show. But really though, he looks like he's going to end up being he would be the ideal fit for this Patriots team. Nakobe Dean. There we go. I was trying to find the name, but yeah, Nakobe Dean is the guy that I would love to have the Patriots draft, but he looks like he's going to go around probably top 10, top 15. You're drafting 21, so unless he slides, I don't think you're going to get to him. But yeah, he's that type of he's that type of linebacker that I would love to have, love to have. And he's around 220 pounds, so he's not as big as even a Devin White was or is, but I think you can add some weight. But that's kind of the mold I'm looking for. So really, though, I think if you can get up that high in the draft, I think you should go get him. But really, though, I don't think it's going to happen because we never see the Patriots do that. But anyways, well, like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the year once it gets closer to April and once it gets closer to the draft. But you have to get those linebackers. But for me, the only caveat here is that for me, your needs are get that stud linebacker, get that young athletic linebacker. So you got to fill the linebacker spot. Then you have to get that number one wide receiver. Those are the two. That's how I would rank it here. And then corner. Because depending on what happened, the other thing is with JC Jackson, what's going to happen with JC Jackson? Is he going to walk? Is he going to leave? Or are the Patriots going to franchise him? Which I'm leaning towards the Patriots are going to franchise him here so that they have him back for one more year and see if maybe they can work out a long-term deal or at least draft his replacement or sign his replacement in free agency. We'll see how that goes. But those are the three: linebacker, wide receiver, and corner. Now, for most of the year, for me, it was wide receiver, corner, linebacker, or a defensive front seven. But after how bad they got exposed, you really need to address your linebacker core. You really do. And like I said, but what I wrestle with though is that Mac, who played well, because I mean, Mac Jones actually played halfway decent in that game. He actually threw a beautiful pass down the sideline, and that should have been dropped right in the bucket to Nelson Aguilar, and he dropped the ball. Absolutely just Well, no, I'm sorry. He didn't drop the ball. He didn't high point the ball, but it was an absolute beautiful play by Micah Hyde, who just intercepted it. But it was a beautiful pass. And I know some people, oh, he threw it a little bit. No, Mac Jones put that on the spot. He threw it well. And to me, Mac played amazing. And we'll talk probably about this next week too, because I mean, this is going to go on and on and on. But if you're out there and you're saying that Mac Jones is not the guy, then you're so dumb. I mean, if you don't think that you can't build around him, and to say that, okay, you can't that you need that mobile quarterback, that you're never going to win again with a statuesque quarterback. No, I think that's absolutely wrong. I mean, Brady, yes, he's the greatest of all time, but Brady's still doing it. And to me, Aaron Rodgers really, yes, he uses his legs, but he does a lot of the damage from the pocket. If you look at it, most of these quarterbacks are doing the damage from the pocket. It's not like they're out there get like Lamar Jackson and running for over 1,000 yards. They're doing this a lot with their arm. And I still think, and Mac Jones isn't immobile. He has a tiny bit, he has a little bit of mobility to him. He's not Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen out there, no, for by any means, but he's not Tom Brady either. He's got more mobility than him, and obviously I know that's not saying much, but you can win with Mac. That's my point. Is you can win with Mac. You just have to surround him with weapons. But if you want to dump him now, or if you're going the Colin Cowherd route, saying, oh, they should just try to package him and trade him because you're not going to win with Mac Jones. If you're letting this one game color you, then you don't deserve to be on the Mac bandwagon. Then just get off the Patriots bandwagon as well. It's just like, why do you want to just go trade it? Obviously, if you're going to give me a Aaron Rodgers like in his prime, Tom Brady in his prime, if you're getting one of those, or hell, if you were going to get um, you give me any of these guys. You give me a Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. Yeah, you're giving me one of those guys back. Okay, I'll say, see you later, Mac. Pack your bags. I wish you all the best. Yes, I would do that. But that's not reality. And it's so stupid to say that, because he is a guy that I think you can win with. He still has a ceiling to go. It's not like all of a sudden now it's just, oh, we're done. This is the end of the ceiling. This is the best we're going to get out of Mac. And to say, and to be like, okay, he's only going to win if he has weapons. That's stupid as well, because every damn quarterback that there ever has been, Tom Brady, Joe Montana, Terry Bradshaw. I don't care if they're a pocket passer, or we can go to Steve Young. We can go to Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, any quarterback, Russell Wilson. They all have to have their weapons. They all have to have a guy. Even if you want to go, oh, when Russell Wilson won in 2013 when it was defense, yeah, but he had Doug Baldwin, he had Percy Harvin, he had Tyler Lockett wasn't there yet, but he had his guys. He has weapons. Aaron Rodgers has always had Jordy Nelson. When he won a Super Bowl, he had Greg Jennings, I think Donald Driver was still there in 2010. Jordy Nelson. Do I have to go on with Rodgers? I mean, obviously we could talk all day. Tom Brady, yeah, he didn't win with Randy Moss, but he had Randy Moss, got into a Super Bowl, almost went undefeated. Oh yeah, Tom Brady has the greatest tight end of all time, and Rob Gronkowski. He had Julian Edelman. He had Wes Welker. He had you had Deion Branch, Troy Brown, David Givens. You and Troy Brown and Deion Branch were all great. Well, not great, but they were all really good weapons. So you can't just, because they didn't win the Super Bowl in 2006, or they didn't win anything in 2013 when they didn't have anything here. 2019, they didn't win anything when they didn't have anything here. I know 2006, they probably would have beat the Bears. That's That's how bad the NFC was that year that the Chicago Bears made it to the Super Bowl in '06. But I mean, yes, I know Brady has elevated it and has almost won with some bad receiving cores, legendarily bad receiving cores here in New England. But still, my point being is that all these great quarterbacks at some point in time have all these weapons. Tom Brady went to Tampa for the weapons, for Godwin, for Evans, brought in Antonio Brown. You have to have the weapons. Like I said, Brady won most of his Super Bowls with weapons on his team. And you can debate on the scale of the weapons, but yeah, Deion Branch, before he went to Seattle, was actually really good. It was kind of on the rise, and then things kind of plateaued. But to me, you always have to have those. Yeah, do you have to have Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, all those all the time to actually win a Super Bowl? No, but you actually have to have a number one. And that's what all these big time quarterbacks have in common is you have these number one weapons. You have them at your disposal and they win Super Bowls. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, when he won his Super Bowl a couple of years ago, has his guy in Hill and Kelsey. But that's my point is that they all have their guys. And Mac Jones is it needs his own to raise his ability. And I think, and you get him the weapons, I think he's going to be a lot better. He's going to be a guy that can throw 35 to 40 touchdowns if you get him the weapons. Because I think they'll be able to open the playbook. So I think that's where, in my opinion, if depending on how things shake out in free agency, because at this point, I don't think they're going to they're going to open up their wallet again this year as much as they did. I think you'll see them kind of go back into shopping in the secondary market, get an Isaiah McKenzie, get somebody like that, get those veteran, if you're looking at wide receivers, go that route and try to get somebody in the draft. But I think you can kiss the Devontae Adams if he doesn't follow Rodgers to wherever he goes or stays in Green Bay. I don't think you can say goodbye to Devontae Adams. The other number one receivers that are going to be out there on the market, maybe Allen Robinson, but he's still going to price himself out of the market. So basically, all these number one receiver, as much as I would love to have Chris Godwin here, he would be a perfect fit. He's going to price himself out of the Patriots spending, just because I think at this point where they spent so much last year, I don't think they're going to open up the wallet. So this is where I think you're going to have to shop in the bargain bin, which is obviously nobody wants to hear that. And if you spend anything in free agency, you're probably going to go spend it on a linebacker or a corner. And where I think you can do this, get a number one, is in the draft. And I'd love to see them get Jamison Williams out of Alabama, a former teammate. Well, actually, no, not a former teammate of Mac Jones, because he transferred from Ohio State to Alabama this year. But anyways, you get a guy in Jamison Williams who I think could be a really productive number one weapon on this offense. Can play inside, can play outside. He's got speed, is a good route runner. And then you have Chris Olave out of Ohio State. And then you have Barrett out of Ohio State. And then you have AJ London, probably butchered the first name there because I don't know if it's AJ, but London out of USC. So there are those guys there, and we'll profile them as we get towards the draft. So I'm not going to get hung up on all the names here, but the point is that I think this is another good year for receivers. Not as good as the past 2 years, but it's still going to be a solid year for receivers. So you're going to be able to get those guys. And a lot of these guys are transferring very well over to the NFL level. So I think this is where, if you're not going to be able to get a Devontae Adams, get those big time number one free agent wide receivers to come to you because you're not going to spend. This is where I think you're going to have to get this in the draft. Now, what we also have to remember is this is still rebuilding. This is still a rebuild, folks. This is still everything that we were trying to talk ourselves into it last offseason. We all wanted we all probably sat here. Well, I shouldn't say all of us, but I know I sat here and I knew that this was going to be a rebuild. This was going to be a 2, 3, 4 year process for this team to get back to where you want to see them. Now, I think things got really sped up because I think at one point when they were 9-4, we were all like, "Oh, we're so happy that this was going to happen, that they were going to be able to be that number one team, that number that they had a chance at the number one seed. They were 9-4. Things were falling in their direction. Mac Jones looked so good, but then that last month of the season happened, and reality smacked us in the face. And then the playoff game punched us in the face. That's really what happened. So things were going well for the Patriots. And I think we started to fast track them, and we all started to get greedy. But we just have to remember this is really year one, because I don't think 2020 was just a toss away year. But this is the true year. You got your rookie quarterback. You have your building block. You ended up getting Ramondre Stevens. You got Christian Barmore. So you got 3 young, really good players in the draft. Now, this is where you have to continue to build on that. And then you also brought in Kendrick Bourne. You have Hunter Henry. So you have some complementary pieces. So this is where you have to bring in those playmakers on defense, especially in the front seven at linebacker. You have to bring in the playmakers on offense. And this is where I've talked myself into, if you get those number one weapons for Mac Jones, then yeah, you're going to have you'll really have a good opportunity here for Mac Jones and the Patriots to really grow and move forward here with the Patriots. And I just think I'm not. Yes, trust me. I was mad. I was pissed off. I was kind of in that like Patriots depression mode where it's like, oh man, they just get their asses kicked, and what's going to happen now? And there's so much that we're going to be able to talk through with the offseason, what direction that they're going to go in. And like I said, I think they have to improve the linebacker core, and I just think that's right now it's linebacker, wide receiver, and you just have to kind of play this out as far as what the draft is going to bring you, because the one thing I just don't want to see him do is just reach in the draft, and because you need a linebacker or because you need this other position, a wide receiver, that you go and stretch for one when you're taking somebody you shouldn't, when there's a 10 times better player that could be an all pro or could be a pro bowler, could be a really helpful piece to you, could be a starter for a long time in this league. And then you just reach for this linebacker that really doesn't have, or this wide receiver that doesn't have it. So as much as I want him to do these things, I just don't think that you should just go out there and reach for something. And like I said, I've talked myself into the point where you get Mac the weapons, you go out there, you draft somebody that you can build around with him. This is you have an opportunity to have a special season. But I think they'll have. I think they'll have the ability to. I think you just have to pump the brakes here. You just have to say to yourself, this is going to be a longer run than it's going to be. I mean, it's going to be a longer rebuild than what you're hoping for. It's like I said, it's going to be that 3-4 years, or yeah, I don't think it's going to be like 1 year, 2 year rebuild, because at this point, right now you have to focus on that defensive front, getting linebackers, getting younger at linebacker, and then go into propping up your offense, or vice versa, whichever way things unfold. But you have to focus and address whatever area you want this year, because you can't just get everything all at once. You're going to have to pluck those pieces this year. You're going to have to pluck and then the pieces that you don't have, you're going to have to get those again the next year, the following year. And then you build everything to where you're going to be in a position to challenge for the division, challenge for the AFC Championship, and then challenge for a Super Bowl. You can't just get everything all at once. And trust me, as much as I would like that to happen, as much as I would like it to be a microwave Madden style rebuild, it's not going to happen. It's going to take time. But right now, I think this is where your defense got exposed. And right now, if you can get younger at linebacker right now, that's what I want to see him do. So, like I said, I probably next week I'll probably be like, no, you got to get them offensive weapons. But to me, it's just those two things. It's the linebacker and the wide receivers that I think you're just going to have to that I really want to see him improve right away. And like I said, I'll probably have changed my mind a million different times, and I'll probably talk myself into one scenario over the other. So I'll probably have somebody come on and talk me off the ledge or talk me into the other direction to really put my foot down on this. But it's just been it's I probably should I'm probably put my foot down on both of those, but like I said, it's going to be a long rebuild. Or I shouldn't say long. It's just going to be longer than you want to. I don't think, like I said, you're not going to pop this in the microwave and it's going to be done. This is going to be 3 years, 4 years of a rebuild. But like I said, they're in a good hands because they have Mac Jones. Now I know we talked a lot about the Patriots there, and we took up a lot of the podcast with that. So we'll just kind of go through quickly here as the Boston Bruins came out. We're 3-0. Then they got smacked in the face against Carolina. But I think that's more of an aberration here because I really don't think that's going to be a long-term thing for the Boston Bruins. As like we talked about before, they're starting to get things turned around with David Pastrnak down on the second line. They've started to get some of their scoring. I think that was more of an aberration for the Boston Bruins. And really, now that you have Tuukka back, you have your number one goaltender. You have that confidence that you'll have in your veterans because you have Tuukka back. You have Linus Ullmark there. As much as I didn't want to see Swayman go down, if you're bringing in Tuukka, he was going to be the casualty, and that's exactly what happened. So as it stands right now, I don't think Carolina is going to be indicative of what's going to happen. And at last check, they were tied with Washington with the Capitals. But it'll be interesting to see how things unfold here because if you put yourselves in where you're that third or fourth team in the division in the Atlantic division, then or not the Atlantic, but in the Bruins' own division, where you're fighting to move up the playoff rung. Now that you have Tuukka back, are you going to have one more bite at the apple here as far as going and trading for? In my opinion, you're going to need to get another defenseman to bolster the back end, and again, you're going to have to get another scorer. I know that sounds like a broken record because every year it's get more secondary scoring, get another second line scorer, get a third line scorer. But I think you're going to need that because eventually, as we've seen, things dry up at some points and you're going to need somebody else to step up. So I think if you can get that secondary scoring and then get good depth to improve your defense, then I think the Bruins will be in a good position. So I think if they continue to play the way they are, you get back on track. You just show that the Carolina game was just an aberration there. Then I think you're going to be in good position to. I don't think they're going to be a true cup contender as far as go that deep in the playoffs. But I think if you get some other pieces, and then you'll see where it stands. Because as of right now, I think you're in a good position, but you're not a true cup contender. But if you continue to show that you're playing well, then you give Don Sweeney a little bit of pause and be like, okay, maybe we're in that zone where we can get back into the playoffs. So I think they're in a decent position. And as we mentioned off the top of the show, the Celtics are basically in wash, rinse, and repeat mode. It's been awful. Jason Tatum had an awful night against the Hornets. Your best scorer did not come out to play. And like I said, every time I feel like we're talking about the same thing every time we do the show. It's just, okay, Celtics go on a tiny little run, then they drop a bunch of games or they drop some important games, or then they just have an inexplicable loss to a team like Charlotte. So they're basically in purgatory. And I'm losing so much confidence in this team. I don't see how they're going to be able to get out of the first play-in round. I don't think they're going to even be able to win that first one to even get to the second one to get into the real playoffs. So it's just like it's just a nightmare for the Celtics. I just don't think you're getting enough out of your superstars in Tatum and Brown, And these guys, and then they try to say all the right things, but in reality, it just does nothing. It doesn't come out right. So this team is in a bad spot. Even though they have some good young players, which you think you could build around, it just seems like the rest of the roster is just filled with, okay, you got Neesmith, you got Pritchard, you have these guys where, okay, I thought they were going to develop, but it seems like they're stuck in mud. They're not developing. And you just have all these assets that just seem like they wilted away while the rest of the NBA has passed you by. It's so frustrating to see you're wasting Tatum. Tatum. I shouldn't say that because Tatum's part of the issue here. Just because it's just so frustrating. We're having the same conversation, and maybe things might be breaking up here because there was a report before I came on the air tonight that Danny Ainge looks like he might be looking into trading for Marcus Smart with a couple picks, which is kind of interesting because that really tells you what he thinks of Marcus Smart. Where, yeah, I want Marcus Smart, but you have to give me sweeteners with first round picks, which you would think if he liked Marcus Smart that enough, he would just be like, oh, yeah, I'll take Marcus and I'll take a few future first or second, or I'll just get some late round picks. But no, you're going to have to trade away some really good asset. At least in this theoretical trade. So it'll be interesting to see in it. But I'm just praying that maybe we're not going to have the same conversation next week when it comes to these Celtics, and that maybe there's some positive, but I'm not holding out any hope in this case. It seems like we're going to be talking about this franchise still floundering and wasting years of their young youth. And like I said, they're culpable in their own demise, really. So it's just a bad stew of things going on there with the Celtics, and it just hopefully they can turn it around. But I just don't have lot to lean on here. So, and then we'll wrap things up here quickly with a few of our bets here as we'll help you out this weekend as we'll look at the divisional round of things for the NFL playoffs as excuse me, as we'll look around as we have two games on Saturday and two games here on Sunday. The early game Saturday at 4:30 is the Cincinnati Bengals and the Tennessee Titans. The Titans are the favorite. They're the 3.5-point favorite. And I honestly, though, this is where I would, if you're going to bet this one, which I think I might put a little bit of my own cash on this one. This is where I would take Cincinnati because I think Cincinnati is going to upset the number one seeded Tennessee Titans on the road. And I would take the Titans on the money line and take that over as well with the 48 points. I think this is where Cincinnati hits the gas pedal. And I just don't think Derrick Henry is going to be healthy enough in this game. So I would take Cincinnati. The late game on Saturday at 8:15 is going to be the San Francisco 49ers versus the Green Bay Packers. And I think in this case, as much as I want to take the Niners in for an upset, I just think Aaron Rodgers has been cooking all year long, and Devontae Adams has been a stud, and this defense for Green Bay has just looked great all year long, looked unstoppable. So I'm going to take the Packers on the money line on this one. And something here tells me to take the under with this one because I think both of these defenses are pretty solid. Obviously, Green Bay I like a lot on their defensive side. But I think the San Francisco defensive front seven has enough to slow the Green Bay down just enough. So I think I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'll take that under on the 47 just because I think this is where possibly Green Bay's defense does have an answer here for Deebo Samuel. So you're going to have to put this back into the hands of George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk, which obviously George Kittle is on track to be a Hall of Fame tight end. So obviously, put it in the hands of Kittle. But still, I think this is where I would take the Packers, but go with the under on this one. And then the early game on Sunday, which is at 3:00 with the Rams and Buccaneers, that one is the Buccaneers are favored at home with the Rams. This one's been, I've been going back and forth. If you're for gambling purposes, I would take the Rams on the money line to outright win and go with the over on this one. I just think the injuries are going to be too much for the Buccaneers to overcome. I know it sounds like they might get Leonard Fournette back, but how healthy really is he? And this Rams front seven is fearsome. You got Aaron Donald who can give Brady a lot of fits. Now, I know the Buccaneers have already beat the Rams, but I think this is where LA does go down to Tampa. And because just some of the injuries that the Bucs have been dealing with, you don't have Chris Godwin. And Godwin, I think, versus these better teams versus the Rams, and if they make it to the NFC Championship game against the Packers, this is where it's going to have not having him, that's going to really hurt. So I think for gambling purposes, you take the Rams on the money line and the over 48.5. So, but if gambling wise, I would take the Rams here. And finally, the late game on Sunday at 6:30 is the Buffalo Bills versus the Kansas City Chiefs. So for this game, I would take the. This is one I've been going back and forth, but I told you guys I'm picking the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl. So, and even for gambling purposes, I take Kansas City here and take the over because this is going to be a shootout. So that 53.5, I think you can easily bank on that over there. I think you're probably going to see a 30 plus points from both of these teams. So wrapping this up again, I said take the Cincinnati Bengals in the over, take the Kansas City Chiefs money line. Take the Green Bay Packers and the money line, but take the under. With the Rams Buccaneers, take the Rams and the over, and then finally take the Chiefs and the over. So, I mean, if you're really kind of feeling frisky and you think about and you have a little extra cash, maybe you throw down a bet with the Bills because they're only a +2. So this is really a pick'em game. So I mean, Buffalo really showed out in that last game against New England, as we talked about. So I think this is where you might be able to throw. I wouldn't fault you if you went with the Buffalo Bills in this game. So it'll be a good weekend of football. There's really good matchups that are left here on the board. So you have some good chances to make some good money here with these games. Now, hopefully you guys win some cash, and hopefully if I put some down here, hopefully I win some too. That would be nice. But I hope you guys enjoyed this show tonight. And as I said, we'll get into a lot more with the Patriots and a lot more here with the Bruins. I know we kind of got heavy on the Patriots tonight, but now with the football season with the Patriots season over, obviously we'll still have you covered for the NFL playoffs. We'll break down. Once kind of things die down here with kind of talking about a lot of the Patriots, but actually probably won't die down a lot, but we'll get you covered for the playoffs, and obviously we'll do a Super Bowl special as well because I mean it's football. We're all going to watch, Patriots or not. We'll get you covered with that, and then we'll definitely break down the Bruins, and hopefully the Celtics give us something to talk about. But until next time, remember to follow the show on Twitter at NE Sports Weekly with that handle, or you can follow my accounts on Twitter or Instagram. It's the same handle as you can see on the screen. It's at Sean_Met28, and Sean spelled SEAN_Met28. And always remember, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe for the show. And then on Spotify and SoundCloud, remember to hit that like and subscribe as well to follow the show so that you get your updates when the show has been uploaded to Spotify or SoundCloud, so you can always keep up with the latest in Boston sports. And as always, remember, send me your questions, send me your comments. I always love the feedback, positive, negative, whatever it is. Hey, it helps me grow, helps the show keep on growing. And hopefully if you like the show, tell a friend. And even if they're not a New England sports fan, tell a friend, because, hey, you never know. Maybe they have some other output that they would like to talk about here. Hey, we always talk about the NFL and others, especially we're talking out of market games here as well because the NFL is so big. But yeah, tell your friends. Let them know if you love the show. But for now, I've been Sean Metcalf, and I hope you have a good weekend and hopefully enjoy those football games. We'll see you next week.